The awakening, the void between stars, held many secrets, but none as terrifying as the one Admiral Kekstar was about to discover. His 4 eyes tracked the readings on the Zephyrian patrol vessel's scanner array, each display showing numbers that defied logic. The energy signature blooming in Sector 7 Alpha measured beyond their instruments' capacity to record. "Sir, the readings are off the charts," reported Navigation Officer Yellen, her scaled hands dancing across holographic controls. "It's like watching a star being born, but there's nothing there." Kekstar's mandibles clicked in agitation. In his 40 years of military service, he had never encountered anything that could generate such massive energy without a visible source. The Zephyrian Empire prided itself on having the most advanced detection systems in the galaxy, yet their scanners showed only empty space where impossible power readings originated. "Maintain distance and continue monitoring," he ordered, his deep voice carrying the authority earned through countless battles. "Alert Coalition Command immediately." The bridge crew worked in tense silence as they watched the anomaly grow stronger. Then, without warning, space itself began to tear. Reality rippled like water disturbed by a stone. And from the dimensional wound emerged something that should not exist. It was massive, easily 15 kilometers from bow to stern, constructed of materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The hull appeared seamless, as if grown rather than built, with organic curves that flowed like frozen liquid metal. Strange symbols pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly, speaking of technologies beyond current understanding. "By the ancient gods," whispered sensor technician Mordok, his voice barely audible. "What is that thing?" Kex felt his blood chill as recognition dawned. The design was familiar from historical archives. From nightmares the older species whispered about in darkened corners of space stations. The angular geometry, the predatory grace, the way it moved through space like a living creature rather than a machine. This was human construction. But humans had been extinct for 8 centuries. The Great Silence had begun 800 years ago when humanity suddenly stopped all communication with the galaxy. Their colonies went dark, their trade ships vanished, their home system became unreachable behind an impenetrable barrier that no probe could penetrate. Most species celebrated, relieved to be free of the aggressive, unpredictable race that had emerged from a backwater world called Earth unchallenged. The established order, but now something had returned. "Transmit standard greeting protocols," Kekstar commanded, though his instincts screamed warnings. All frequencies, all languages. The communications officer's tentacles worked frantically over his console. "Transmitting, sir." No response. "The vessel isn't acknowledging our signals." The mysterious ship continued its approach, moving at a steady pace that suggested neither urgency nor hesitation. It simply advanced with the inevitability of a natural force, like gravity or time itself. As it drew closer, details became visible that chilled every member of the bridge crew. The hull wasn't simply dark, it was actively healing itself. Sections that had appeared damaged or worn were visibly regenerating, metal flowing like living tissue to seal microscopic breaches. Weapon ports that had been sealed were opening with organic fluidity, revealing cannon systems that hummed with barely contained energy. "Sir, I'm detecting massive power fluctuations," reported the chief engineer, his voice tight with fear. "The energy output is increasing exponentially. If those are weapons charging," Kekstar didn't need the warning completed. He had seen enough combat to recognize the signs of a warship preparing for battle. But this was no ordinary vessel, and the energy readings suggested firepower that could sterilize planets. Emergency transmission to Coalition headquarters, he ordered. Priority. Alpha. Unknown human vessel has emerged from deep space. Request immediate fleet response. As the message raced through quantum relay networks toward the Coalition's central command, the mysterious ship performed an action that sent waves of terror through every monitoring station in the sector. It simply stopped, hanging motionless in space, and began to scan everything within a 50-light-year radius. The scan wasn't a simple sensor sweep. It penetrated every ship, every station, every inhabited world with an intensity that physical shielding couldn't block. Crew members across the sector reported feeling watched, examined, judged by an intelligence that pressed against their minds like cold fingers. On the bridge of Admiral Kekstar's patrol vessel, the main display flickered and changed without any input from the crew. Alien symbols appeared, resolving into text in perfect galactic standard. I am the UES Eternal Sentinel. I carry the memories of Earth and the souls of humanity. You who betrayed us, who celebrated our silence, who thought us gone forever. We remember everything. The message vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Then alarms began sounding as emergency transmissions flooded in from across the sector. Ships were losing power, stations were going dark, and everywhere the same message appeared. We remember everything. Coalition Command responded with characteristic efficiency and overwhelming force. Within 6 hours, 3 full battle fleets had arrived in Sector 7 Alpha, forming a containment perimeter around the human vessel. Dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyer squadrons, and support craft created an impressive display of galactic military might. Admiral Thekros of the Coalition First Fleet took command from his flagship, the massive battlecruiser Sovereign Authority. A veteran of the border wars and the synthetic uprising, he had never faced an enemy he couldn't defeat through superior numbers and firepower. Unknown vessel, he broadcast on all frequencies. You are surrounded and outnumbered 300 to 1. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire. The response came not through communications arrays, but directly into the minds of every being in the assembled fleet. The voice was feminine, calm, and carried the weight of centuries. I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, formerly of the Earth Science Consortium, currently the living memory of humanity aboard the Eternal Sentinel. We do not recognize your authority, Admiral. Thekros, you represent the coalition of species that orchestrated our genocide. We are here to ensure such atrocities never happen again. Thekros felt his 3 hearts skip beats as the implications sank in. The woman speaking claimed to be human, but humanity had been extinct for 8 centuries. More disturbing was the fact that she knew his name, his rank, details that should have been classified. Impossible, he growled into his communication. Array. Humans have been extinct for 800 years. You're either an advanced AI or an alien masquerading as human. The response came with a demonstration that silenced all doubt. The Eternal Sentinel's hull began to shimmer and holographic. Projections appeared in the space around it. Images of Earth in its prime, blue oceans and green countenance, cities that touched the sky and ships that sailed between stars. Then the images changed, showing the same world under attack, its surface scarred by weapons, its people fleeing in desperate evacuation ships. But the most damning images came last. Secret meetings between coalition leaders, documents bearing their signatures, proof of a conspiracy to eliminate humanity before they could challenge the established galactic order. The holographs showed coalition forces destroying evacuation ships, orbital bombardments of refugee colonies, and finally the deployment of a dimensional weapon that cut Earth off from the rest of the galaxy. "We trusted you," Dr. Vasquez's voice continued, now carrying an edge of ancient pain. "We opened our worlds to your species, shared our technology, defended your colonies from external threats, and you repaid that trust with betrayal and murder." The assembled fleet remained frozen in space, weapons charged but unfettered, as the truth of their ancestors' crimes played out in holographic detail. Many of the crew members belonged to species that had participated in the genocide, and the weight of generational guilt pressed down like a physical force. Admiral Thekros tried to regain control of the situation. "Even if your accusations are true, that was 8 centuries ago. Those responsible are long dead. We are not our ancestors." "No," Dr. Vasquez agreed, "but you benefit from their crimes. You live in a galaxy shaped by humanity's elimination. You rule systems that once welcomed human colonies. You mine worlds that human pioneers discovered. The blood of my species built the foundation of your prosperity." The Eternal Sentinel's weapon systems came online with a sound that every sensor array in the fleet detected, a harmonic frequency that seemed to resonate in the bones of every living being present. But instead of firing, the ship performed an action that demonstrated power beyond comprehension. It began to move through the Coalition fleet, not around or over, but through the assembled vessels, as if they were merely illusions. Ships that tried to block its path found their hulls briefly becoming incorporeal, allowing the Sentinel to pass without causing damage. The demonstration of casual mastery over physical laws sent waves of terror through the fleet. "We do not wish to repeat the cycles of violence that destroyed us," Dr. Vasquez continued as her ship completed its impossible journey through the fleet. "But we will not allow the galaxy to forget what was done. We are going to every world, every station, every colony to ensure the truth is known. The age of lies ends now." The Eternal Sentinel accelerated toward the inner systems of Coalition space, leaving the assembled fleet behind like toys forgotten by a child. As it departed, one final message echoed in the minds of every being who had witnessed the encounter. "We are not the humans you destroyed. We are what humanity became in the silence you forced upon us. We are memory made manifest, conscience given form, and we will be the judges of what comes next." The Reckoning, the Eternal Sentinel's arrival at the Coalition capital world of Prime sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. For 8 centuries, the gleaming towers of the capital had stood as monuments to stability and order. Now, as the massive human vessels settled into orbit above the planet, those same towers trembled with the weight of approaching judgment. Chancellor Vorth stood in the observation deck of the Coalition Central Command, his normally composed demeanor cracking as he watched the impossible ship hover motionless above his world. As the elected leader of 47 different species, he had dealt with countless crises, but nothing had prepared him for the return of humanity's ghost. "All planetary defenses are offline," reported Defense Coordinator Zalthek, her normally steady voice betraying hints of panic. "The ship isn't jamming our systems or attacking them. They're just ... not responding to our commands." Vorth's scaled, hands clenched behind his back as he processed the implications. The Eternal Sentinel wasn't disabling their defenses through force or hacking. It was asserting dominance over technology itself, bending the rules of physics and engineering to its will. Sir called Communications Director Pelenok from his station. "We're receiving a transmission from the vessel. It's unusual." The main display flickered to life, showing not the bridge of a warship, but something far more unsettling, a perfect recreation of the old Coalition Council chamber from 800 years ago. Every detail was precise, from the curved walls to the voting podiums, exactly as it had appeared during the secret sessions that planned humanity's destruction. In the center of the chamber stood a figure that made every being in the command sent to freeze with recognition and terror. Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared exactly as she had in historical records. From Earth's final days, a woman of middle years with steel-gray hair and eyes that held the accumulated wisdom and pain of her entire species. But there was something more, something that marked her as beyond merely human. "Greetings, Chancellor Vorth," she said, her voice carrying across dimensions with perfect clarity. "I believe we have much to discuss." Behind her, the chamber began to fill with translucent figures, the ghostly forms of humans who had died during the genocide. Scientists, soldiers, children, artists, engineers, all bearing the marks of how they had perished. They stood in silent accusation, their eyes fixed on the coalition leadership. "This is impossible," Vorth whispered, though whether he was denying the technology or the guilt it represented, even he wasn't sure. "Impossible?" Dr. Vasquez smiled sadly. "We thought it impossible that our friends would turn against us. We thought it impossible that species we had helped would conspire to destroy us. Yet here we are, all of us, impossible beings, discussing impossible truths." The holographic chamber expanded, growing to encompass the entire command center. Coalition staff found themselves standing among the ghostly remnants of humanity, feeling the weight of accusing stares from the dead. The temperatures seemed to drop, though sensors showed no change in environmental conditions. "You're not really here," Vorth said, trying to maintain his composure. "This is some kind of advanced projection technology. I am as real as memory, as solid as guilt, as present as consequences," Dr. Vasquez replied. "When your ancestors destroyed our bodies, they thought they had erased us completely. But consciousness, Chancellor, is not so easily eliminated. We found ways to survive, to preserve not just our minds, but our very souls." She gestured to the ghostly figures surrounding them. "Every human who died in your genocide lives on within the eternal sentinel. We are a collective consciousness, a living repository of everything our species was and could have been, and we remember everything." The implications hit Vorth like a physical blow. If this was true, if humanity had somehow transcended death itself, then the Coalition faced not just a powerful enemy, but the accumulated judgment of an entire extinct civilization. "What do you want?" he asked, dreading the answer. "Justice," Dr. Vasquez replied simply. "Not revenge, not destruction, but acknowledgement of what was done, and assurance that it will never happen again." The holographic chamber began to change, walls dissolving to reveal scenes from across Coalition space. Ships belonging to every member species found themselves surrounded by similar projections, their crews standing trial before the collective consciousness of humanity. The Eternal Sentinel wasn't just addressing the capital. It was simultaneously manifesting in thousands of locations across the galaxy. "You will witness the truth," Dr. Vasquez continued, "all of it, in its full horror. You will see what your ancestors did, understand why they did it, and face the consequences of building your civilization on our graves." The first testimony began with recordings recovered from the Eternal Sentinel's vast memory banks. Coalition leaders from 8 centuries ago appeared as holograms, discussing the human problem with casual cruelty that made even their descendants flinch. They breed too fast, one ancient Zephyrian admiral was saying. Their expansion rate threatens every established trade route. Within 2 centuries, they'll control half the galaxy. Their technology advances at an unprecedented rate, added a long-dead Valorian scientist. They solve problems we've struggled with for millennia in mere decades. They're making us obsolete. But it's not just their capabilities, interjected a Catherian diplomat, her words dripping with fear and hatred. It's their philosophy. They believe in equality, in uplifting primitive species, in sharing resources freely. They're going to destroy the social order that keeps the galaxy stable. The recordings continued, detailing the step-by-step plan to eliminate humanity while making it appear natural. Sabotaged evacuation ships, poisoned colony worlds, the final dimensional weapon that cut Earth off from the rest of the universe. Every atrocity was meticulously documented, every betrayal captured in perfect detail. As the evidence mounted, Coalition personnel across the galaxy began to break down. Some wept openly at the scope of their ancestors' crimes. Others fell to their knees, overwhelmed by generational guilt. A few, the strongest or most stubborn, continued to deny what they were seeing. Chancellor Vorth found himself reliving not just the historical evidence, but experiencing it from humanity's perspective. Through some impossible technology, he felt what it was like to watch friends turn into enemies, to see rescue ships explode as they tried to escape, to die knowing that trust had been the weapon used against them. "Stop," he gasped, falling to his knees as phantom pain from betrayal lanced through his consciousness. "Please, stop." The vision ceased, leaving him shaking on the floor of the command center. Around him, his staff were in similar states of collapse, their minds reeling from exposure to humanity's final agony. "Now you understand," Dr. Vasquez said gently, kneeling beside the Chancellor with surprising compassion. "This is what we carried into extinction. This is the pain we've borne. For 8 centuries. Vorth looked up at her with eyes wet with tears he didn't remember shedding. "We didn't know. The historical records were classified, sealed. We thought humans had simply disappeared." "We know," she replied. "The conspiracy was designed to be forgotten, the evidence buried so deep that even the descendants of the conspirators would never learn the truth. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially when they're written in blood." "What happens now?" Vorth asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Will you destroy us as we destroyed you?" Dr. Vasquez was quiet for a long moment, her ghostly companions watching with expressions of pain and hope warring on their translucent faces. Finally, she shook her head. "Revenge would make us no better than those who betrayed us," she said. "We didn't survive 8 centuries of exile and pain just to become the very evil we fought against. But neither can we allow the galaxy to continue as it has, built on lies and maintained by ignorance." She stood, and as she did, the holographic chamber began to change again. The walls of the ancient council chamber faded, replaced by something new, a vision of what the galaxy could become. Worlds where different species worked together as equals, where resources were shared freely, where the strong protected the weak instead of exploiting them. "This is our proposal," Dr. Vasquez announced, her voice now reaching every being in Coalition space simultaneously. "A new galactic order built on the principles humanity died trying to protect. Equality, cooperation, justice, and truth. The vision showed coalition fleets being restructured into protection forces rather than instruments of oppression. It showed trade networks redesigned to benefit all participants equally. It showed colonies where humans and aliens worked side by side, building something greater than either could achieve alone. But we thought humans were extinct. Someone in the command center protested weakly. Dr. Vasquez smiled, and for the first time since her appearance, it was a smile of joy, rather than sorrow. Death, it seems, was not as final as our enemies hoped. We preserved more than just memories and consciousness. Hidden colonies, sleeper ships, refuge worlds scattered across the galaxy's edge. Humanity survived, waiting for the day when the truth could be revealed and our people could return. As if summoned by her words, new contacts appeared on sensor displays across Coalition space. Ships emerging from hidden bases, colonies dropping their cloaking fields, human settlements revealing themselves after 8 centuries of concealment. Not just a few survivors, but millions, entire populations that had remained hidden through generations of secrecy. We're offering you a choice, Dr. Vasquez continued. Accept the new order. Help us build a galaxy where all species can thrive equally, and humanity will return as partners rather than conquerors. Refuse, and face the judgment of every human soul that has waited 8 centuries for justice. Chancellor Vorth struggled to his feet, supported by the weight of impossible decisions. Around him, his staff were slowly recovering from their ordeal, their faces marked by the knowledge they could never unknow. The coalition government will need time to consider, he began, but Dr. Vasquez raised a hand to stop him. Time is the one thing we've had in abundance, she said. 800 years of waiting, of planning, of grieving. The decision must be made now, while the truth is fresh in your minds and the consequences are clear. The Eternal Sentinel pulsed with energy, and across the galaxy, human ships began moving toward coalition systems. Not as invaders, but as returning citizens reclaiming their birthright. The message was clear. Change was coming whether the coalition embraced it or not. Vorth looked at his advisors, seeing his own realization reflected in their faces. They could fight and likely lose everything in the process. Or they could accept that the galaxy they had inherited was built on a foundation of lies and needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. What guarantees do we have that humans won't seek revenge once they're in positions of power? He asked. Doctor. Vasquez gestured to the ghostly figures that still filled the chamber. The same guarantee we gave 8 centuries ago. Our word. We are a species that keeps its promises, even when betrayal is the response we receive. We offer partnership, not domination. The vote, when it came, was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Species after species chose truth over comfortable lies, justice over inherited privilege. The Coalition Council restructured itself with human representation. Human colonies were welcomed back into galactic society, and the Eternal Sentinel took its place, not as a weapon of war, but as a guardian of peace. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed in ways that amazed even those who had voted for change. Human technology and philosophy, refined through centuries of survival and introspection, brought solutions to problems that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia. Poverty decreased, conflicts resolved peacefully, and for the first time in recorded history, every species had an equal voice in their shared future. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the consciousness that had carried humanity through its darkest hour, stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Sentinel, watching ships from a dozen species working together to build a new space station. Beside her, the ghostly forms of her people had grown more solid, more real, as if proximity to justice had given them substance. "Do you think they'll keep their word?" asked the spirit of a child who had died in the evacuation ships. Alina smiled, placing a hand on the child's nosseled shoulder. "They'll try," she said, "and when they falter, we'll be here to remind them why they made these promises. We are the eternal sentinels now, guardians of the principles our species died to defend." The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the price of betrayal and the power of truth, and watching over it all, the eternal sentinel sailed on, carrying within its hull not just the memory of humanity's pain, but the promise of its hope.